It was the absolute pinnacle of luxury travel. I mean, basically a giant floating hotel. And then, in a little over 30 seconds, it became one of the most famous disasters of the entire 20th century. Today, we're diving into the final, fiery moments of the Hindenburg. And this is it. Lakehurst, New Jersey. This is the exact moment that a symbol of the future, the whole dream of luxurious airship travel, just turned into an absolute nightmare. And the whole thing was captured for the world to see.
So what really happened? For decades, that question has been at the center of a huge debate. Was it just a freak accident? Or was it something a little more sinister? To really get a handle on it, we first have to understand what the Hindenburg actually represented in its heyday.
Let's start with part 1, spectacle and tragedy.
I mean, you have to picture this thing. It was the absolute peak of 1930s engineering. At over 800 feet long, it really was less of an airship and more of a flying hotel. It was this massive symbol of German ingenuity and pride, in those really tense years right before World War II. And this wasn't its first rodeo. It had already made 10 successful round trips to the US just the year before.
And honestly, this slide right here tells the whole story in just 2 pictures. On the left, you've got the peak of innovation, right? Just majestically gliding over Manhattan. And on the right, its catastrophic end, a twisted skeletal heap.
Okay, part 2, the fateful landing. This is where you can see all the pieces falling into place for a disaster.
So, right off the bat, things are not going to plan. The Hindenburg is already hours behind schedule. Thunderstorms forced the captain, Max Pruss, to just circle and wait for what must have felt like an eternity. By the time he could finally make his approach, he was fighting shifting winds, and the ship was weirdly heavy in the back. The pressure to land was just immense.
And that brings us to part 3, 32 seconds. This is the moment a totally routine arrival became an absolute catastrophe, captured forever by news crews waiting on the ground. And that sound, wow, you can just hear the raw shock in his voice. What's so incredible about that gut-wrenching call from reporter Herbert Morrison is that it wasn't even broadcast live. It was recorded, and when they played it the next day, it instantly became the unforgettable, horrified soundtrack to the tragedy.
Now think about this number, 32 seconds. Some reports say 34, some even say 37, but the best estimate we have is that it took just 32 seconds from that first little flicker of flame to this massive airship being completely destroyed on the ground. Just over half a minute. It's unbelievable. The fire started near the tail, and because it was filled with millions of cubic feet of highly flammable hydrogen, it didn't just burn, it devoured the whole structure with just shocking, incredible speed.
So as that tail section is just getting eaten by the fire and collapses, the ship loses its lift back there, and the bow, the front of the ship, lurches violently upwards. It's this horrifying vertical tilt that trapped crew members in the front inside what had become a literal vertical inferno.
When you look at these images of just total devastation, it is so hard to believe that anyone could have survived. And while 36 people tragically lost their lives, what's truly astonishing is that nearly 2/3 of the people on board, 62 people, actually made it out alive. And the stories of how they survived are just incredible. I mean, you've got a 14-year-old cabin boy who was saved when a water tank burst and put out the flames right around him. A professional acrobat smashed a window with his movie camera and timed his jump perfectly. And sometimes it was just pure luck. The wind happened to blow the flames away from one side of the ship, which allowed most of the people there to escape.
All right, so after all of that, the biggest question still hangs in the air. Part 4, the unsolved mystery. Was it an accident or was it sabotage? So the investigators, they pretty quickly zeroed in on 2 competing narratives. The official story became the static spark theory. Basically, a spark from the stormy atmosphere ignited some leaking hydrogen. But a much more sensational theory also took hold: sabotage. Yeah, the sabotage theory, it really adds this layer of spy thriller intrigue, doesn't it? Some people, including the commander of the Naval Air Station, were convinced it was a deliberate act. Suspicion even centered on a specific crew member who died in the fire. But, and this is a really important but, no real evidence of a bomb was ever found. Neither the German nor the American official investigations ever backed that theory.
So this brings us to part 5, the end of an era. How did this one single event completely shatter the public's faith in a whole new way to travel?
See, here's the thing. There had been deadlier airship accidents before the Hindenburg, but this one was different.
This one exploded right in front of news cameras and microphones. The world didn't just read about it in the paper the next day. They saw the flames and they heard the screams. And that just made the horror immediate and totally undeniable.
And that, right there, is the ultimate legacy. This spectacular, very public failure, combined with the fact that faster airplanes were on the rise, just brought the whole era of passenger airships to an abrupt end. The dream of floating across the ocean in a luxury liner was over.
So in the end, whether it was brought down by a random spark of static electricity or a deliberate flash of sabotage, the fall of the Hindenburg remains this incredibly powerful and haunting symbol. It's a reminder of just breathtaking technological ambition and of how quickly it can all come crashing down in a fiery tragedy.